Okay, so today we're talking about a short story by Ursula K. Guin, and it's called The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. I'm very excited about this video. So basically the story is about this utopian city that is called Omelas, and a utopia is basically a place where everything is perfect, nothing is wrong, it's just amazing and perfect, right? The story starts, at the beginning of summer. They have a festival of summer that is starting, and they just describe all these incredible things, and the city is perfect. There's no suffering, there's nothing bad, it's just vibes, it's great, right? Now of course there is one condition for all this perfectness and wonderfulness in the city of Omelas, because nothing is free, not even freedom. And that condition is that in order for the city to remain as perfect and incredible and just wonderful as it is, there's one child in the city that suffers constantly and continuously. So basically the child sits in a broom closet in the basement of some random building in the city, right? And the closet is about 3 paces wide and 2 paces long, so it's very tiny, it's very tight, and there are some brooms and mop sticks in the corner of the room. The child looks as if it's 6 years old, but it's really almost 10 years old. The child is extremely emaciated. They say it's so skinny that it doesn't even have calves on its legs anymore. The child has kwashiorkor, it's got a protruding belly, it's got sores on its legs, on its thighs, and it sits in its feces daily, just like that, right? The only time anything ever changes is when they just bring food for the child. So every now and then, somebody will open the door, they'll kick the child, just to make it stand up, make sure it's still alive. And then they slide in its bowl of cornmeal. So that's all the child ever eats, is just some bowl of cornmeal. They slide it in, shut the door back, and that's it, right? And the child just sits there. Sometimes when they bring food for the child, there are people that just come and watch, right? Just to see the child. Essentially, that's the deal, that's the situation, right? And everybody in the city knows that this is the case. Everybody in the city is aware that this child exists and is sitting in that dark basement day and night, sitting in its own feces, and that is the condition for them to live the wonderful life that they live. Now, the child has not always lived in the utility closet. It still remembers some things about its life before, like, what sunlight feels like, or the sound of its mother's voice. But it's been sitting in that closet for a long time, such that it's almost forgetting how to talk, like language. Now, when children start getting older, and old enough to understand things, around maybe 12 or 13, their parents will explain the situation to them and explain the existence of the child, right? And of course, they're usually very horrified when they learn about it, very disgusted and everything. So these youths are usually, the ones that come to see the child when they open the door to give it its food, right? At those meal times, because they mentioned that some people just stand there just to see out of curiosity. Now, of course, the youth generally have a harder time dealing with this and processing it and making their peace with it, whereas those who are older have had more time to deal with it, work through it, all that kind of stuff, and just accept it, right? And live their good life. Now, of course, you don't have to stay in the city if you're not comfortable with this, right? If you're not able to make your peace, you can leave. And there have been some people that have left. Not a lot, not many, but some people have left, and most of them have been youth. The ones that have been like, I can't take it, I'm leaving. The select few that have actually left. They talk about how, when the young people first learn about the child and see what's going on, they have to find a way to make some sort of peace with it, right? And then, some people rationalize to themselves, okay, even if the child were to be released today, what kind of life would it have? It's been sitting in this closet for years, suffering for years, extremely traumatized. If it were to come out, that kind of trauma will take a lot to unpack to begin with. Secondly, everybody understands the terms of the agreement, right? If the child were ever to come out within the hour, everything that is so perfect in the city of Omelas would be gone, right? Like, it's all just going downhill from there. And so basically the child would be coming out of suffering to follow everybody to unsuffer. So why not just leave the child where it is? And then, the other people in the city, the thousands and thousands that live there, will keep having a good life because the child's already suffering it that way. So yeah, basically they try and find ways to justify it, in order to just be able to live with themselves. And this process usually takes years, whereas some people are never able to justify it. It's a select few and they leave, right? Now the question then basically is, what would you do when you realize, what the situation is, that your enjoyment and the enjoyment of thousands of other people in this city depends on this, perpetual suffering of that one child? Would you leave the city? Would you stay and find a way to make your peace with it? Would you try to release the child, knowing that you're dooming other people, thousands more, to suffering? I asked a couple of people this question, right? Like, what would you do kind of question, and I got some very interesting responses, and we'll talk about that in a second. But just getting back to the story, right, and the point and the matter at hand. Now, this story raises the question of utilitarianism, right, which is a theory in ethics that states that, you know, the right thing to do or the moral decision to make is a decision that has the greatest amount of benefit for the greatest amount of people, right? Now, obviously, it's a very controversial theory of ethics, and this story is a very good example of the dangers of a utilitarian viewpoint, right? Because by utilitarian standards, the right thing to do is to keep the child in suffering, you know, and enjoy your life, because thousands more are going to benefit from that one child suffering. But then, is that fair? Is that right? Doesn't that one life count? Now, I know we all want to believe that we would do the upstanding thing, you know, and free the child, or at the very least walk away. But let's make it a little bit more interesting and ask a couple of questions, right? What if the option of freeing the child wasn't there? So what if the only options were stay, make your peace with it, and live a good life, or walk away? Would you then still walk away? Because the child, either way, is then still going to be sitting in the closet suffering, and if you leave, you're just joining other people in the normal world to suffer. Like, whereas you can stay, make your peace with it, and live a good life, because either way the child suffers and not you. But then going further, what if it was more than just one child? You know, what if it was 2 children, or 4, or 25? That's still a lesser number than the thousands of people in the city that are going to be benefiting from their suffering. What would you do then? Would you be able to justify, you know, letting that group suffer for the benefits of the majority, or would it be harder to rationalize that? Now, again, by utilitarian standards, the answer is yes. The answer is that is the right thing to do, is to let the vast majority enjoy at the expense of that few. Now, to make it even more interesting, let's slowly walk it back to reality for a second, right? What if it wasn't some, you know, fictional utopian city of Omelas? What if it were Nigeria? And we could all wake up tomorrow and Nigeria is perfect, is fantastic. Or not, let's not even say perfect, let's just say the country, we could wake up tomorrow and the country is working, you know? Things are just the way they should be. But all of that depends on the suffering of that same one child in a closet somewhere. And we all know firsthand what Nigeria has been, and the suffering that we've all, you know, like the way everybody has eaten breakfast in that country one way or another for years and years and years. And this will fix that. And the only one condition is that one child sits in a closet and suffers. Would that decision then be harder to make? It's just that one child suffering, as opposed to before when millions were suffering. Now, I first read the story when I was in school and university a few years ago, but when I reread it recently, one of the first things that crossed my mind was, you know, people who are the children of Nigerian politicians, right? At some point, when you start understanding things, you realize that your parents really are the bad guy in this story, and they are helping and allowing and making millions of people to suffer so that you and them can live such a fantastic life. I'm assuming there's a point at which, you know, these people do the math and they realize exactly what's going on and the role your parents play in this story. How do you even make peace with that? And the truth of the matter is, a lot of them make peace with that because that entire time they were blissfully quiet when they saw what was happening and their parents were sending people to go and shoot civilians at the Lekki toll gate. May the souls of those we lost during NSAS rest in peace. I know it's October and that incident happened a year ago. We remember that. But anyway, yeah, this example applies to them in that way, because what is the thing to do then? You know, obviously the moral thing to do is to speak up against their parents and do whatever it is they can do to be a part of the solution instead of staying silent and complacent. But then if they do speak up, that would mean they're not stand up and join everybody else that is suffering when they can just stay where they are and live a good life. It's unfortunate, but that is the question everybody would ask themselves. And again, it's your family, you know, these things are easier to say, but maybe a little bit harder to do in real life. Not that I'm justifying anything, no, please, if your mommy and your daddy are still from the country, it's God that will judge them. But anyway, the points that this story made about how the youth are usually the most enraged by this also hit home for me. And I think that's usually how it is, right? You know, we see young people, they get older, they learn about injustices and they're so infuriated and they're so enraged and they want to do everything in their power to make it better and be better and all that kind of stuff. Obviously reminding me a lot of myself. When you look at it, you know, in the story, the older generation, they've had more time to deal with it, you know. Maybe they've tried to release the child. Maybe they've gone through the emotions. Maybe they've gone through the emotions of the cycles and cycles and cycles of suffering in Nigeria, and they've done everything they can to change it, but they have been defeated by it, and so they've come to accept it. Whereas the youth look at that, and they're so upset and they're so angry, as in, how can you accept this? Why won't you try to change this? The system has beaten them up, whereas the youth, anyway. But basically, you see what I mean, right? And that's exactly what we see in the story. So I obviously thought that was very interesting and speaks directly to reality in a lot of ways. Alright, so let's talk about some of the responses I got from people when I asked them, I explained the story and I asked them, what would you do in this situation? Would you free the child? Would you leave the city? Would you try to make your peace with it? Knowing that if you free the child, you are dooming thousands more to suffering. Okay, so the first person I asked had a follow-up question for me. She said, why must it be a child that's suffering in the closet? Why can't it be a man that deserves it because they deserve it? And I was like, I don't have the answer to that. But then she also said that honestly, I know we would all like to think we would do the right thing, but she doesn't know what she would do. Anyway, I asked somebody else who said that so let me get this straight. He was like, let me get this straight. So you free the child and then the child now come out and join everybody and everybody will suffer, as in you free the child and then daily NEPA will take lights, things are just everything is just going down here for them. He was like, no, that is hard though, but almost the child will stay there and just remain where it is. Unfortunately, I had someone who said make everybody suffer, make everybody get that, free that child now, let everybody eat this breakfast and then when you free the child and everything goes downhill in the city, everybody will not stand up and come and put heads together and they'll think of a way to make things better, they'll be gingered as opposed to just relaxing. So free the child, everybody be motivated to work together and make things better in the city. And somebody else gave a similar response. I had another person, she was like, yeah, no, free that child. The child not do anything to you people. The child not responsible for your happiness. There's no reason why you should be suffering for you to enjoy, so free the child. Nah. I had someone who said that they would walk away, and these are very interesting responses, and I wish I could have asked a wider group to see what their answers would be. And obviously it's a fictional story, but in a lot of ways it's not that fictional, because if you really think about it, as we've discussed, it applies to real life in a lot of ways. Some other utilitarian problems, right, are the trolley problem, the one where you're in a trolley or a train or whatever, right, that's going down the tracks and the tracks divert into two, right? On one side you have 5 construction workers that are just walking, and the other track you have one construction worker that is walking. They can't see or hear you, so basically, and you can't stop the train. All you can do is choose which track it will go down. Would you kill the one or kill the 5, right? Again, by utilitarian standards, the moral thing to do is kill one person as opposed to 5 people. But then other theories of ethics would say, well, why is that fair? Is the one life less worthy than the 5 lives? And the problem gets more complicated as you throw in more variables. Okay, what if the 5 people are murderers and serial killers and that one person is a normal person? Nothing is wrong with them. Why would you still kill them? Or what if that one person is a surgeon that saves lives on a daily basis? Anyway, yeah, you get the point. But at the end of the day, with the story, most people don't walk away. Most people will find a way to make peace with it and live their lives. The story ends by saying, there have only been a few people that ever actually walked away. And I know we would all like to convince ourselves, and we can all convince ourselves that, we would be part of those ones that walk away from the city, or at the very least, that will be part of the few ones that want to release the child so that everybody will suffer together. But anyway, I would love to know what you think in the comments. Let me know so we can chat and discuss. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.